Yo, if you are running challenges, webinars, or launches and your backend revenue is just simply unpredictable, then this video is going to be an incredible blueprint for you. I just walked a client through a $150,000 ad spend post-mortem where we mapped out exactly where they were losing cash, leads, and the momentum inside of their challenge funnel ultimately. And it's not exactly what you would expect. The challenge was incredible. The pitch was really, really good, but the follow-up logic was completely broken. Their sales process was disconnected. The handoffs were completely, full of leaks. I mean, there was just leads falling through the cracks. And in this video, I'm going to show you how we break down the full funnel audit framework we now run for every client before we touch a single lead. And this is how you stop praying for back-end ROI and really start building predictable sales off of your challenge list, even if you're only selling a $1,000 product. So again, we're going to break it down in this video. I'm going to show you exactly how to audit the funnel start to finish and ultimately just pull more cash out of the leads that you already have.
All right. So again, we are breaking down a challenge funnel, and there was a few problems associated with this. So there's about $150,000 in ad spend for this given challenge that resulted in about 12,000 total opt-ins, and there was 597 VIP buyers at $47 a piece, or $28,000 in total revenue, kind of on the front end. Now, ultimately, this led to a negative ROAS pre-pitch for the actual challenge. Now, when the program was actually pitched on the challenge, there's only 12 1K buyers, which obviously there's some type of conversion issue there. Now, for this brand and for this funnel, that is pretty rare. So that's not the problem that we're trying to diagnose here. We will talk briefly about it. But we need to recoup all of this ad spend, and we need to get back about 121K. Now, at a 5K price point, 121,000 divided by 5, or sorry, yeah, 5,000. That's about 24 programs that we need to actually sell, which out of 12,000 opt-ins is definitely doable. But the question is, how in the world do we do that with 12,000 opt-ins? How do we optimize to be able to get those as quickly as possible? And there are a few things that we really need to consider here, and we're going to go through each of those. But I'm going to break down this entire funnel and how to optimize this so that you can get as much cash as possible out of the funnel. Now, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And something I really want to talk about is this SQL. Okay. And currently in this funnel, when we were diagnosing what is the current process and how are we going to hit these leads, and we're looking at this, we have our MQL and our SQL. And we started mapping this out live on the call. The call was about 2 hours, and we broke down the funnel really start to finish. And we just really started by, you got ads, email list, organic, and then the opt-in happens. From the opt-in, you have the VIP upsell or the regular attendees, and then the challenge starts. We have day 1, day 2, day 3, and then we have a pitch either on day 2 or day 3, and then we sell the purchase of the 1K program. Now, you have obviously 12 people who purchase this, and you have 597 people who purchase this. Now, everyone else is a non-buyer. They may or may not have attended, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, how in the world do we get these people to actually, how do we get to our 24 deals to recoup our ad spend? Really, we probably want to be at 50, 60 deals off of this challenge at a minimum. We need to do that as quickly as possible because every single day that goes by, these leads are getting colder and colder. Now, working with Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins, we ran into this problem all the time. We'd have hundreds of thousands of opt-ins for a challenge. And the question is, how in the world do you actually, optimize your challenge funnel for hitting these leads and optimizing for the most amount of revenue as possible? So the first thing we need to really look at is when this challenge is happening, and they purchase a 1K program, how many purchased the 1K program? And then how optimized is our upsell motion for those? Okay. Now, in this given situation, we have sales reps selling the 1K program from here. Now, that may not make a ton of sense, and we have to ask some questions for us to really understand if that makes sense. Now, down here, the question that I asked is, what is the fastest path to selling more 5K programs? That is what we need to do. We don't need more 1K programs necessarily. We may, but that falls into this question. So we need more 5K programs. The first question I asked is, do we believe marketing is able to sell a 1K program without the support of a sales team? Most marketing teams are going to say, yes, of course, we can sell more 1K programs. Okay, great. Then If so, why would the sales team be selling the 1K program at all? Is that something that they should be doing? And if they do, the only reason for them to sell it is to have a clear path to an upgrade. Meaning, if I sell 10 1K programs, what percentage do I know are going to upgrade into a 5 or 10K, 20K package? And I have to be able to prove this model as a sales leader so that I can show them the quickest path to cash as a closer. Because if we just sell a bunch of these, the closers are not going to make any money. You're going to have a sales team that's frustrated, and they're not going to perform to the level that they need to. It just doesn't financially make sense for them. So then the question becomes which means we need to have the perfect upgrade model. In this situation, we don't have a perfect upgrade model. We hardly have an upgrade model. Okay. So if we don't have that, the next question then becomes, what is an MQL and what is an SQL in this given funnel? So we have our MQL right here and we have an SQL. Now, as of right now, how this funnel sits, the MQL is upon opt-in, and then the SQL is also upon opt-in. And this is a very rare situation, okay? And my argument in this case is an opt-in is not an SQL, okay? Now, does that mean that we shouldn't be calling all 12,000 opt-ins? No, they're leads. We can call them, but that is not an SQL. So the first thing that I helped them do is move this SQL. Okay. We need to move this SQL further down the funnel. So then the question becomes, where does the SQL become an SQL? And that depends on your brand. That depends on your structure of the challenge and, what your marketing team and sales leadership teams believe. For me personally, the SQL does not even move over here. The SQL could potentially go right here, right? If they purchase a 1K program, the SQL definitely exists there. Another place that you could put the SQL is right here. Okay. So basically on a VIP upsell, that means they had intent, they upgraded, they purchased, they spent some money. You could consider that an SQL. But what about all these no purchasers? Because you have 597 of these and 12 of these, right? So you have about 600 out of 12,000 leads. That leaves you with, whatever that is, 11,400 and something people that fall into this no purchase category. And what happens here is not very clear in this funnel. We don't have a real path. The path is, let's just dial all of these, okay? And if you're calling all opt-ins, triaging them, and then selling them to the 1K or above program, that is a lot of heavy lifting for the sales organization. And we have to be able to prioritize. So we only have a few options there. We either have a setter team, if you have 12,000 leads and you need to get to them within the first 7 days, let's say, let me fix this. So you have 12,000 leads. You need to get them to them in the first 7 days. That's 1,700 leads. Okay. So let's say out of 1,700 leads per day, and let's say we're making 100 connections a day or 100 dials a day, you would need 170. Oh, sorry. Put too many zeros there again. So you would need 17 sales reps to effectively hit all of those leads in that given time range. 17 setters. That is a lot of setters. Okay. So that is one option. Have 17 setters. We just go crazy. We call every opt-in that exists. Now, a secondary would be to now begin to break up all of these non-purchasers into different buckets and hit those in priorities, which we need to do regardless. So how do we break up non-purchasers? Well, that may be people who attended all 3 days of the challenge. We would want to call those people first. Then it would be people who attended, let's say, 2 days of the challenge, at least 2 days. Then it would go to something like, people who attended a day. Now, as you can see, that segmentation is still not perfect. There's not a lot of information there other than they showed up to the event at some point. It doesn't really tell us, do they have the money to purchase? Are they qualified? Is there enough intent there? So we need to start asking further questions. Now, a better way to do this is something like this, okay? And I'm going to show you this little funnel down here because this is really, really important. But What we would instead want to do is all of these non-purchasers, we want to do option 2 or 3. So option 2 is to email and text and market back to all of the non-buyers with a replay. Okay. And this replay is going to have a application on the replay. Now, the application, if they choose to fill it out, shows extra intent, a higher level of intent than people who just attended one day of the challenge and haven't paid anything, right? So we're getting intent. They filled out the application. Now, again, just because they have intent doesn't necessarily mean they're qualified. So we then can grade it and we can send them to an order page, which then we can upsell to a 1K program. We can send them directly to book a call and we can have a conversation with them, or we can downsell them into one of the other programs. Okay. Now, there's going to be a large portion of people who don't open this email and don't fill out an application. So now we still have a huge chunk of non-purchasers. But what we are doing here is the first part of this little funnel over here, which is optimizing. We're driving as many leads as possible to take action and grade. So we're increasing their level of intent and we're bubbling the high intent leads to the top of the funnel so we can convert those as quickly as possible before they go cold. The last thing we want to do is have warm or hot leads inside of this funnel that we let go cold because we're actually reaching out to a bunch of people who are not high intent leads or warm leads. Okay. So we are optimizing this for high intent leads. But again, you're going to have a large portion of people who opted in, did not purchase anything, did not check their email, did not watch the replay, and definitely did not submit an application. Okay. So then what do we do? And that usually is going to fall into option number 3, which is we're inviting them all to a weekly group coaching or a bonus day or a secondary event where we can repitch. Now, the repitch can either be repitching the original product that we sold, or it can be pitching to a sales conversation, right? Or pitching to an application, which then that again would go directly back into this motion up here. Okay. Now that's really phase 2, which is nurturing. We want to feed the leads with content and get them to buy in more. We want them to consume more. Okay. Most of your brands will not know how many hours of content they need to watch before they make a purchase, but it is an incredible metric to be able to understand. But all we need to do is keep them warm. We need to re-engage them. We need to get more content in their hands. We need to become more convincing, and we need to re-pitch something. Okay. Now, the last part of this is the squeeze. And this is where we're going to dial anything that is left over. But again, if you just start dialing and you skip these 2 big levers, what we're doing is we're optimizing for the calling of 12,000 people or, whatever, let's say the people who attended here, who we have no real data on. We don't know their level of intent. We don't know their financial capability. So the odds of success are going to be very, very low. We're going to have to filter through a ton of leads just to have some conversations. When in reality, a much simpler way is to make sure that we are optimizing and bubbling up the most important leads to the top of the funnel, hitting those while they are still warm. And then anything left over is then going to go into our squeeze, where we're squeezing the lemon, we're squeezing the juice out of it, because that is what is left over. Okay. But if you do not do this first, you are just wasting time. There's absolutely no reason to skip to number 3 down here without doing these first 2. We must do these first 2 if you truly want to squeeze the most amount of revenue out of this. Now, you can also see here we have how are we increasing show rate? This is a marketing piece. And if your SQL is now all the way over here, okay, let's put this thing over here. That means basically, unless they were a purchaser, this is still an MQL. So your MQL now moves all the way over here, okay? And this is super important because if you're telling marketing that their job is basically done over here, they're going to stop doing their job, right? But if our main goal is to get an SQL for the sales team, then it changes where the MQL and SQL actually sit in your funnel. So if you are having challenges with your funnel and you're not quite sure where leads are slipping through or it's not converting like it should be, you need to map out your funnel like this. And then you'll quickly start to see, oh, okay, we have a little bit of like an issue here. And then you can start coming up with ideas of what you can do about that. But without mapping out the funnel, typically what I see is a bunch of people just saying things that may or may not be true. Okay. It's more feelings and emotion than logic and reason. Once we map it out, it's very clear here that we need a great upsell motion here for any of these 1K purchasers. We need to definitely talk to anyone who purchased, but then we have, what is it, 85, 95% of the leads falling into this bucket. And just dialing this bucket is not really going to help us. But that doesn't mean we're not going to dial. That means we just optimize first and then we dial. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to do some other videos on a VSL motion as well as a webinar motion, but this is the challenge model specifically. And there's a lot you can do inside of here once you change this. You can see the sticky note here is become profitable here at if all possible. So marketing needs to start asking the question, how do we become profitable on this challenge prior to basically at the pitch, right? If you can become profitable all the way over here, or at least a break-even ROAS based on VIP upsells, that is when you're really, really running an incredible challenge. Now, not everyone's going to be able to do that, and you need to break even over here. If you're not able to break even over here, what you're now stuck doing is trying to recoup it all with this, which is also okay. But if you don't have a really clear back-end sales process, you're definitely not going to recoup those funds. And your sales team is going to go crazy because your entire marketing team is going to be like, you guys have to go get $121,000. And since this is not a clear process, it makes that very, very difficult in understanding what the actual next steps needed are. Okay. So lots of options here. I hope this video is helpful. Again, this is how we break it down for our clients, is basically just build this out and start asking the right questions. You can see the questions here, and we start mapping this out. Potential SQL sources. This is something your marketing and sales team can have a conversation about. When do we believe an SQL becomes an SQL, right? Is it a failed purchase, buyers, VIP buyers, X amount of attendance? Are there any other situations that we might consider an SQL? And based on your leadership, you may have different opinions on what is an SQL. But at least when you do this, you can get clear on what an SQL is, and then you can start building out the process to make sure that the sales organization is taking care of those leads from that point on and has a very, very clear structure on how they're actually going to do that. The other piece here is we need to make sure that we're asking the right questions. So in this situation, does it make sense for people to be selling, sales reps to be selling the 1K program? There's only one situation in my mind that it makes sense to be selling the 1K program, is that if there's a extremely high volume of 1K programs where we're basically just taking orders and processing those, which is not the case here. Or we have a really, really clear upgrade process where I can say, hey, 30% of leads that I sell into a 1K are going to convert to a high ticket, which then incentivizes the sales team to actually sell these. But if we don't have that clearly documented, and this is not optimized up here, then there's no, logical sense for them to be selling the 1K program. It's going to be a really tough sales leadership conversation and challenge that they're going to run into. So again, I hope this video is helpful. If you liked it, go ahead and comment. Let me know what other funnels you want us to break down and how we can support. But there's lots of different funnel types. Again, make sure you map it out, and I will see you on the other side.